Clear prop.
Star 73, Yankee number 2, following twin traffic, 3 mile final, clear Pleasantville. 1 Charlie Bravo, exit in runway 25, going 4 mile final.
This is Behind the Prop with United Flight Systems owner and licensed pilot Bobby Doss and his co-host, Major Airline Captain and designated pilot examiner Wally Mulhern. Now let's go Behind the Prop.
What's up, Wally?
Hey, Bobby, how are you?
I'm fantastic as always. Those of you that know us, we are Bobby and Wally from Behind the Prop. I own this flight school, and he is a designated pilot examiner. And we have a room with a number of people in it that came to listen to us live to record a show. And I thought we'd start off by saying we're going to be at Oshkosh. So if you are listening before we get to Oshkosh, follow us on whatever social media you follow us on, and we will let you know where we're at and when we're together and do some meet and greets at Oshkosh. And I thought we'd talk a little bit about the Behind the Prop history to start.
Yeah.
Our first show, I don't know how early we recorded our first show, but I think we probably recorded 2 or 3 weeks before we were going to publish it. We had a lot of names for the show. You remember any of the other names?
I don't. What do you?
I still have a journal of them. I don't remember. It was something. There was something. Captain was one of them. I don't remember what Captain was, but it was taken. And we were exchanging text messages, and I came up with Behind the Prop somehow.
Yeah.
And I want to say 24 hours later, we had a logo, and we had a website, and we were ready to go. Back then, we did real good. We would record weeks in advance, have maybe 5 shows in the can, where we would be able to publish those 5 shows. Today, not so much, Wally. What's the normal average lead time before we start recording that we plan the show?
An hour?
Yeah, normally we're on the phone. We're on the phone probably more like 20 minutes before the show, brainstorming. Normally it's something that's happened either in my training life at the flight school or something that Wally has observed on a check ride that maybe made him get scared or his heart rate go up. And we talk about those incidents and things on the show. Our first show was October the 1st, 2020. So, gosh, it's been almost 5 years now. And the first episode, I don't remember how long it took, but I think for us to get to our first 100 downloads was like maybe 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah, I'm looking at the data right now. To get to the first 1,000 downloads took 52 days. Now we average almost 500 a day.
Yeah, if in many days over 1,000. So
Yeah.
The show still grows, which is exciting. Thanks for everybody that does listen. This show that we're recording today is our 172nd episode. So we have 171 shows out there today. A number of influencers. And one of the things that we agreed to early on was that we would never take on advertisers. So I think out of all the podcasts in the world, we might be the biggest that doesn't still have any advertisers. And it's not something we're proud of now because we wish we were making money, but we volunteer to do this. All this is 100% free. We've never made a dime from anybody. We have had a few people fly us different places to do shows, but we've never taken a dollar from any advertisers, and have over 500,000 downloads at this point. And it's something that we enjoy to do. Wally gets recognized at his corporate or his company job more often as a podcaster than he does as a pilot, and it's pretty cool stuff. So to get us started, and if you didn't know, we are listened to on 5 continents every day, and we are ranked one of the top 1%ers in all podcasts globally, which is pretty cool, but that means we're in the top 250,000 shows because there's 25 million podcasts, but we're doing something right for all of the 5-star reviews and things that we have. So if you're into aviation, hopefully you tune in and continue listening to the show.
You know, and we asked for feedback, and so far we've never gotten a email that says the show sucks. And now we've gotten some criticisms, and it's usually technical things. They'll say that at the 14-minute mark, you said that the coefficient of friction of a pavement on wet rubber was this, and it's actually that. And 100% of the time, the listener has been right. We've said something wrong, but it's usually a very technical thing. But that we enjoy that, and it kind of tells us that people really are listening and paying attention to what we say. Have we made mistakes? Yeah, we have, and we will continue because we are human. But overall, the themes of the emails are like, wow, people either they're just really trying to be really nice, or they enjoy what we're doing. So that's kind of nice.
Yeah, it is. And it's fun to do the show. It makes me smarter. I think I've probably told the story to many of you in the room, but every time I struggle with something, I tell Wally we need to do a show on it. So not too long ago when I was in my type rating class, I was doing terrible with departures and arrivals because I don't do many of them in a single engine piston plane. So I told Wally we needed to, on the Sunday between our shows, or the Saturday between my 2 weeks of type rating training, I said we got to do a show on stars and SIDS. And I got to do a whole bunch of homework on stars and SIDS, and I got really smart on how to do stars and SIDS and all the rules and regulations around those, and made me a much smarter pilot. So a lot of the times it's selfish. I'm doing it for myself, or I'm doing it to learn something that I don't know well. And normally it's pretty easy to have a co-host that knows most of everything in aviation that can help me through it. What I think y'all like to hear, or what the listeners like to hear, if the word Checkride is in our show name, it's a pretty popular show. I think every show has some hints about check rides and some content, but if the show has Checkride in it, so we've learned to try to put that word in as many titles as we can. Obviously not just for clickbait, but to try and put content out there that people want to listen to. I think if the show has something in it that is accident, emergency, or something similar, it also gets a lot of downloads because people tune in and listen to those sorts of things. We don't do any of the speculation stuff like behind pilot debrief, and other people do it, but we've had them all on our show, and their content's really, really good. But we don't really break down accidents or incidents. We normally break down the things that people are doing that make their flight training bad or their check ride experience bad, and try and save people a lot of heartburn and pain around that stuff. So I thought I would start by asking Wally a couple questions. We do have a few microphones in the room if y'all want to ask us a question that we can expand upon. But I thought I'd ask Wally what maybe one of his most unique check ride experiences was, to explain to the audience what maybe we don't know from your side of the aircraft.
Yeah, well, there have been a lot of funny moments in check rides.
How many have you done now?
I could look it up, but probably 1,300, something like that. That's general aviation, and if you go back to Part 121 check rides, that's another few thousand, 727, 37, 57, 67, and 777. There have been some funny moments. I've told this story, and a lot of you have heard it, and I've mentioned on the podcast, but I was doing an instrument check ride for a gentleman one day, and it was going really well. We did the first approach, and we did the second approach, and we missed approach on the second approach, and we were heading back to this airport for our third approach and our full stop. And again, it was going really well. There wasn't any doubt where the outcome was headed. And we went missed approach up in Conroe, and in Conroe they always give you an amended missed approach, which is fly heading 250, climb and maintain 2,000. So we did that, and tower switched us over to approach, and the guy called up and he said, Skyhawk 123 Alpha Bravo out of 1,200 climbing to 2,000. And the controller said, 123 Alpha Bravo, roger, altimeter 3014. And my guy, he read back, roger, 3014, and I could see him looking around in the panel as like, what do I do with 3014? And the first thing he saw was the transponder. So he puts 3014 in the transponder. So we're squawking the altimeter, and he was probably at this point not under the hood, maybe. I don't really remember, but I started laughing, and he looked at me. He says, "What?" I go, "Well, that's interesting. We're now squawking the altimeter." And he goes, "Oh, shit." Am I allowed to say that?
Yeah, you
okay.
can.
All right. Nice. He says,
I think you can call your parents. It's okay with me.
He goes, "Oh shit. What were we squawking?" I go, I don't know. And then he says, "I guess I better tell ATC." I go, "Well, they know, but yeah, you might want to say something." And he calls up Approach. He says, "Approach, Cessna 123 Alpha Bravo. I'm sorry. I'm squawking the altimeter," and the controller was probably a pilot, but you could hear him laughing in the background. He goes, "Yes, sir, I saw that. That's fine. Just stay on the altimeter. Clear for the RNAV 17 right approach in the hooks." And so we came in and got a big kick out of that. And I mean, that's just, we all make mistakes in flying. At my airline job, we always say there's not a perfect flight. There's a mistake on every flight. That stuff happens. So that was one of the funny ones. There have been a couple of oh my gosh, I almost died moments, and two of them have been the same thing, and it had to do with the engine out landing. So here we are, we're out in the middle of nowhere, and we're simulating an engine out situation. And, we're lining up for this field or this road or whatever, and we're coming in and we've got the engine pulled back to idle, and we're coming in to simulate a landing, and so we're getting pretty low, and then I finally say, "Okay, let's go around." And in both these cases, the applicant's first movement was to get the flaps up rather than get the power in. So here we are, we're down around 500 feet, maybe doing 60 knots in a Warrior or a 172 or something like that. And we just went from flaps 30 to flaps 0 without the power. And you know what the airplane's going to do, it just mushes. And so in both of those cases, there was probably some words that came out of my mouth that I wish I could take back. But in both those cases, we made it, but we had a good discussion about go-arounds, and I've never flown an airplane where, on a go-around or a rejected landing, where the first action was not full power. Okay, it's power first. If you do nothing else, you can probably survive by just doing power. If you leave the carburetor heat on, you leave the flaps down, you can probably survive by nothing more than power. And that's another reason why we want to keep the hand on the throttle when we're in close. So you really don't have to think about what you're doing. You just push forward, and you're going to be in the right position. So that was a couple of scary moments. Well, I don't want to say scary, but it was, the pulse goes from 60 to 110 really quick.
Well, Wally's walked in this flight school after a few check rides, white as a ghost, and told me we almost bent one of your planes today. He's been sideways on some runways with applicants, and early on that used to scare me, but now I'm just kind of numb to it. I expect that he's going to make sure everything's okay on those check rides, but there's been some scary moments for me too.
I do remember coming into you and saying, "I've got some good news and bad news, and which one you want first?" And the good news was we didn't. The bad news is we almost crashed.
Yeah, that was a long time ago.
And I'll tell you where that came from for the CFIs and everything. This is we're going to do a short field landing on pretty much, well, on a privates and commercials, and what happens is we land and people say simulated max braking. Well, I'm taking a 777 into Maui on Tuesday, which from our standpoint has a relatively short runway. It's less than 7,000 feet. And I joke with people that I'm going to try that. I'm going to land this 777 in Maui, and I'm just going to say simulated max braking and see how that works out. But I think what has happened over the years is we teach our students, whatever you do, don't touch the brakes. because brake pads are expensive. Well, I'm an airplane owner. Brake pads are not extremely expensive. At some point, we've got to try using the brakes. Now, do we need to do it on every landing? No, absolutely not. I'm not saying that. But at some point, we need to teach our students how to use the brakes. And this was a situation where the student told me later, he says he's never used the brakes. He has never used the brakes. And I told him, short field landing, I need to see you get on the brakes. Okay, now I'm going to say pretty quick, okay, you can get off the brakes, but I want to see that muscle memory of, hitting the top of those rudder pedals and making an application of brakes. There's nothing in the ACS that says short field landing. We just say simulated max braking. I mean, if we can do that, why don't we do that for everything? Why don't we say, well, doing stalls is unsafe, so why don't we just get up there and say, simulated buffet and recover it? We don't do that. We do it. We do the maneuver. Steep turns, simulated 45 degrees of bank. We don't do that. Okay? I mean, we could just sit in a room and simulate the whole Checkride if we're just going to simulate things. But why, in this case, is the norm to land and just say simulated max braking? Anyway.
Well, this is where we complement each other, because I do own a flight school and tires are expensive. So the brake pads might not be, but the tires are. And so it's probably my coaching that says, let's don't flat spot those tires. But I do think that there's a technique by which you can do a maximum amount of braking without skidding the tires, and maybe also pull full aft and talk about what you're supposed to do so those muscles are there. For Wally, it's mostly about check rides and DPE stuff and then professional pilot type stuff. Normally for me, I talk a lot about flight training and flight school stuff, what students do correct, what students do wrong. I would say it's probably 30-70 because we spend more time talking about the bad. But I would still say everybody that's out there listening that is doing any type of training, whether it be a full rating like private pilot or it's some flight review or some other add-on like a high-performance endorsement, it truly is not so much about the stick and rudder skills, it's about the book work. And I would say every day I end up talking to at least one student or one parent or two parents about a student, and it's normally, well, they probably come in because they're not soloing and they want a solo so bad. The solo is normally not the problem. The landing probably isn't the problem. It's the knowledge about how to get back to the airport or some technical skill that really doesn't have to be done in an aircraft. And I joke, most people come in here and buy my wife a new pair of black shoes that she does not need this week because they're wasting their money and just giving it to me because they're not coming prepared. And I'm sure you've had a few failures, and it was, how many of the failures are stick and rudder versus knowledge, percentage-wise?
Yeah, I would say of the failures, 15% are stick and rudder.
Yeah. So that should tell everyone it's not about your flying skills normally, and another flight's not going to do as much good as another hour in the books probably. And I know people hate to hear that. They come in here to our orientations or come in and meet the school, and I preach this every day, and they're like, I just want to be in the air. Well, we want you to be in the air too. That's the fun part, but the book work's really the most important piece of it, for sure. Before we go to the next segments, anybody have any questions?
Just on the failure rate, you were saying 15%. If you were to break it, like private instrument, commercial, is that consistent, or with commercial is a stick and rudder instrument? It's knowledge, or is it consistent across?
Does he need to say that in the microphone?
You can just repeat it for him.
Okay. He was asking what percentage of those, and that 15% that I said was stick and rudder, that's just a wag. Actually, it's probably a little bit higher, maybe 25%. But the question is, what percentage is maybe private versus commercial versus instrument? I would say 6 months ago, I would have said that the lowest percentage would have been commercial. But I'm going to change that because I've had a rash of commercials that have had some issues here lately. And I have a theory about that, and I don't, again, it's a theory, it's just my theory. But of those three, the one that is the highest is definitely, no kidding, it's got to be instrument. there's a lot of stuff to instrument flying, and a good friend of mine, a DPE here in Houston, is a mentor of mine who just recently passed away. I had a good discussion with him one day, and a phone call, and we were talking about different check rides and failure rates and that kind of stuff. And his comment was, he says, if I'm giving somebody a commercial check ride and I ask them to perform a chandelle for me, and I can tell that it's a chandelle, he says, I'm pretty happy. But with instrument flight, I mean, if you don't know things about instrument flying, you can make dead people. You can crash. And that's our bottom line. I tell people for our check rides, I say we have 3 goals for our check ride today. Our number 1 goal is to not die. Number 2 goal is to complete the flight or the check ride. Number 3 goal is to have some fun. And if we get all 3, it's a great day. If we get 2, it's a good day. If we get 1, we live to live another day. And instrument flying is it's important. It's important, So, but there's so much. There's so much to instrument flying, and I tell people when they pass their private pilot check ride, I'll usually say, well, what's next? And the vast majority, a lot of people will say, well, I start instrument training tomorrow, and I explain to them that in my opinion, again, just my opinion, I'm not so sure instrument flight training is fun. It's rewarding, but it's a lot of work to go out and fly under the hood for an hour, an hour and a half flight is physically and mentally. It's mentally draining. You come back, you feel like chopped meat, and it's just very taxing, at least for me. And for what I see on instrument check rides, I can see the applicants, the fatigue setting in. So I try to, in between approaches, I'll say, let's take the hood off and let's just fly 10 minutes to the next airport without the hood on, just to kind of give them a little bit of a breather. Because it may take, just to keep the wings straight and level, it may take, 80% of your mental capacity with that hood on, where maybe with the hood off, it only takes 20%. So it's just, it's very fatiguing. But instrument flight is, you issue an instrument rating, and now that person tomorrow can go put their family in an airplane, and they can go fly to an airport where weather is down to minimums. And that's everybody says, well, I wouldn't do that. I said, well, but you could, and you'd be legal to do that. So back to the original question, I'm going to say it's probably, as of today, it's probably 40%, 50% instrument, 30% commercial, 20% private, and that's just a wag at it right now.
Yeah, and that's pretty interesting, because that tells me that the private students that are probably the most worried about their stick and rudder skills, normally it's not the stick and rudder skills, it's the knowledge component.
Right.
And when I get text messages from parents or kids that failed and they think the DPE is out to get them, normally their response on why they failed is like a crystal clear they should have failed, right? Something very serious, something very dangerous. I think the last exchange I had with a dad was, I can't believe he missed 2 things, and the DPE failed him for that in the oral. And I didn't know what 2 things they were, but the 2 things were definitely going to get him killed. One was related to ice, and one was related to the wrong altitude in the wrong direction. So pretty big deals to just overlook and say, we'll let that go. But it was not about the stick and rudder at all.
Yeah, and if I were to guess, I would think that those things that person missed in the oral were probably things that were also missed on the knowledge test. So, we look at it this way. The knowledge test, the applicant has the opportunity to demonstrate knowledge on the knowledge test. Well, we get the knowledge test report. We know the areas where there was a deficiency, so we are required to then ask them questions about that to make sure that it's been fixed. And a lot of times it's not, and that's a huge flag to me. If I don't know if they missed calculating takeoff distance on the knowledge test, and then they were supposed to have that fixed by their CFI because they have an endorsement that says that the subject areas found deficient were covered by the CFI. So it's supposed to be fixed, and then they come to me and they can't figure out takeoff distance. That's like it's strike two. It's a big flag. It's a big flag. I know some DPs will say that's strike three. You're done.
Those of you that are in the room, any other questions for Wally or Bobby? And if not, I'm going to ask y'all some questions. Oh, no questions. No one wants to talk yet. What was the hardest part of your flight training? Give us an idea. Just spit stuff out so we can help address why those things might have been difficult. Go ahead.
Mine was just scheduling with DPEs, so it was just very difficult to get on the DPE schedule. And when I was on the schedule, it felt like the date wasn't short. So even if I had a set Checkride date scheduled, it felt like it could be moved at any moment in like the DPE's discretion.
Yeah, I think that happens. I think our school does a pretty good job of managing it. I'll let Wally take the thought process, but I give my tip. I get a lot of phone calls from people too that say, "Hey, we can't get a Checkride." Probably people in other cities, other states that know that I'm in aviation. What should we do? And I said, well, just send me the text message you sent the last DPE. And the text message is always the same. I'm ready. I'll be signed off. Can I have a date? How many of those do you get every day from a number that you don't know?
All the time. I get that. Hey, Wally, I need a Checkride. And if I respond, which I try to, but it's usually, okay, who are you? Where are you? What kind of Checkride? Are you signed off and ready to go? Oh, well, my name is Joe. I'm coming over from San Antonio. It's ABC Flight School. Yes, I'm signed off and ready to go. And then I will say, okay, may I have your FTN, which is your FAA tracking number, which everybody has. Well, every pilot has. They'll send it to me. I'll go in Niagara and pull up their FTN, and guess what? They have no application. So I will send them a screenshot of it that says no application is available, and I will say, when you are signed off and ready to go, let me know. And that's usually the end of the conversation. So we don't work for the FAA. We are independents as an examiner. The FAA has oversight of us, obviously, and I have what's called a managing specialist with the FAA, and we're in contact all the time. Every time I make a paperwork error, which happens, I don't know, once or twice a month, administrative type thing, I get a little note from him, and I have to go in and fix it. But we set our policies, we set the price. My philosophy is I do not schedule check rides more than about 2 weeks out. Okay, so a lot of times I'll get an email from someone that says, hey, I should be done in September. Can I get a check ride between September 12th and September 16th? Well, first of all, my airline schedule, I don't even know my August schedule yet. So no, I don't know my September schedule. So I don't schedule that far out. The other reason is I'm going to say about 35, I'm going to say a third, 33% of my scheduled check rides don't happen. And usually it's weather. Weather is usually the issue. So if I have an applicant and we schedule a check ride, let's say we get out to the airport and the weather looks good, so we start the ground, we get done with the ground, In fact, today I'm finishing up a young man who we started his check ride last week, and everything looked good. We got ready to fly, and we had significant thunderstorms come in to Houston. So we didn't fly, so we had to discontinue. And that was last Sunday. So I'm getting him back in 6 days later. If I scheduled 3 months out, like some, like I could if I wanted to, then I'd be telling him, okay, yeah, maybe the end of September we can finish you. So by kind of not scheduling that far out, I can do things like that. Yes.
So kind of a two-part question. Do you think there should be more accountability on both the DPE and also the student when it comes to check ride cancellations? Because I know in the past I've scheduled a check ride but with two different DPEs for the same check ride because I know one of their dates is going to change or something's going to cancel and change, so I just kind of had one as a backup. And then the second part is, so like at this flight school there's the cancellation policy, so it's changed how many students are going to cancel. So I feel like if there was a dollar amount that you charge the student or DPE for cancellation, then it would reduce the amount of cancellations. And then the second part is in terms of pricing for check ride, because I know the DPE pricing for check ride can vary by like even in the thousands of dollars. So like the way they charge is just very different.
Okay. Again, so give me the Cliff's Notes of the first part of that question.
More accountability on cancellations and like charging a cancellation fee.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's first of all, I don't. You mentioned double booking with two DPEs. That gets under my skin. I don't recall the last time I canceled a check ride. It was probably one of the ones here, and it was a medical issue with me. I was sick, and legit sick. I really was. I can't speak for that. It's like, well, the doctor canceled my appointment at the last minute. I mean, that's probably happened. It happened to me just recently. I can sit here and say that I don't do that. Do things happen in life? I had a situation where I had a delivery that was going to be at my house, and I really needed to be there to accept that delivery a few months ago. And it's life. It happens. But yeah, I mean, should there be accountability? Absolutely. And again, the pricing. At some point, I have to look at. I have an airline job. If I'm doing this just for the money, I make a lot more money at my airline job, a lot more money, and it's a lot easier. And they don't cancel either. So, if I'm scheduled to fly a 3-day trip, I know I'm going to make that money. With these check rides, again, as I said, like maybe 30% of them don't happen. And that's part of it. I understand that. So, and as far as double booking, that's we as the examiners don't like that, and we talk. Believe it or not, I'll get a text from someone. Hey, does anybody have a check ride with Bob Smith? Yeah, I've got one in 2 weeks. Well, so do I. And then another one. Well, so do I. And so we know two of us are going to get a last minute cancellation. So.
I do say that I know I've known some DPs that take or offer check ride slots on days that they're on reserve, right? But I think the ones that I know that do that are very open about that, right? Like there's a real possibility this is not going to happen, but if you want to pencil it in, we'll pencil it in. And I think that was something that worked for us for a long time, and then it kind of went away. I think we've got a system here, but the thing that I tell people all the time is you can get a check ride with a DPE. And every time I counsel someone, I think they end up getting a check ride. It's the professionalism of the way the emails or the text messages are sent. It's really the context that I am ready. I have this type of plane. I'm in this location. I'll do this for you, whatever that means. It's normally the flexibility of the student, right? Because they are. I can also say I've been around enough with Wally and many other DPs that the money is a lot of money for a check ride, but they are making less money. And if you think about Wally's last Saturday or Sunday where he did that check ride for someone, I think his rate's below $1,000. So let's assume that he did a 3 or 4 hour event last Saturday with that person and got the money, and now he's coming back this time. They may not be successful during the flight, and then Wally will come back one more time to finish that person up. So there could be 3 afternoons of Wally's life that go to that sub-$1,000 payment. And while that doesn't happen every time, it's probably something that's in his mind that he's committing a lot of time and effort for those dollars that are less than $1,000. To the young men and women that are taking check rides, that probably seems like a fortune. But to those of us that are later in life, that's not that much money in the grand scheme of things to give up a half a day. We were just joking before we started recording, how much did this cost us? We're not making a dime, right? And I worked 2 hours last night, 3 hours this morning, content time before that, and we're going to spend 6 hours on this show that's going to record for 45 minutes maybe, and there's zero-sum game for us, right? We love this. We want to do it, but I think that there's a similarity to check rides, that there's a whole bunch of time commitment that people don't think about that they're losing for sure. So in that text message, if you're out there and you need a check ride and you find a DP's number on the FAA's website, I think the real way to send that email or that text message is to let them know what school you go to, who you are, what rating you're trying to accomplish. If you are or aren't signed off, obviously they're going to figure it out the second they get your application or FTN number, and then your availability. I get this all the time. I only want to take a check ride on a clear day, and I'd like to do it in the afternoon. Well, that person's probably never going to get a scheduled check ride based on their desire. And a lot of times, what's the earliest that you've ever been asked to cancel because of weather?
Oh, 4 or 5 days ahead of time. Yeah. We got a check ride on Friday, and Monday morning I get a text that says, hey, the weather doesn't look good for Friday. What's the plan? Oh, what's the plan? I don't even know what I'm having for lunch today. You're asking me what, I may be in a car accident. I may die before then. So,
let's hope not.
Yeah.
The thought process there is, I think a lot of people want it to be a utopia day, and that's just unrealistic. You're not getting a single engine land certificate to fly only on calm days,
right,
in perfect weather, right? So it's not ideal. I was going to ask, so you have a check ride today, a full check ride, I believe, right?
Yeah.
After this show. What, if I was that candidate, and I'm not that applicant, but if I was, what would be the one thing you tell that check ride applicant right now that they should do to be ready for that for you today? Like, what's the one home run that an applicant can do to impress the DPE?
Well, be here early. Make sure the airplane's ready to go. Make sure the airplane is fueled. I joke that I'm going to be, we're all going to die at some point, but I'm going to be laying on my deathbed, and I'm going to wish I had all the hours of my life that I spent sitting at airplanes waiting for the fuel truck back, because that'd be like another year of life. The other one is all the hours I've spent waiting outside the bathrooms at flight schools to get in. But anyway, the other thing is, and we put this in a podcast, how to prepare for your check ride. One thing that I see a lot is when we are beginning, we haven't even technically started the check ride, but we're going through the make sure we're good to be here. The applicant will have to log into IACRA, and your IACRA password expires at some point. I don't know if it's 6 months, a year, 3 months. I don't know, but I can't tell you how many check rides I've sat at where the applicant is now having to reset their password, and they're freaking out. And again, I'm just sitting there and I'm hearing the Jeopardy music playing in my head as they're freaking out. I'm not freaking out, but they are, and you can see the anxiety level go up. So, one thing I tell people, they'll say, well, I just logged in yesterday. Well, it's on a daily thing, so you need to log in the day of, not the day before, because there's the day that it's going to expire. So, just, and when I walk in and I kind of see everything laid out on the desk in front of me, I usually have the perception, first impression, okay, this is probably going to go really well. And maybe to do all the preliminary stuff is going to take us 10 minutes. We're logged in, we're boom, we've hit the ground running. Where with a lot of people, you got to ask for everything, and that's okay. I mean, I don't mind doing that. I have my speech; it's memorized, but if you just have your ducks in a row, it just makes things smoother.
Do donuts or kolaches hurt?
They do not. Breakfast tacos are even better.
Okay, there you go. Good to know. Any other hard things that you suffered with in your training? Yes, Abby, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess during my training, you said earlier, Wally, there's never a perfect flight. And I think for me, flight training, my perfectionist mindset that I have is probably the hardest part for me throughout training to overcome. It's really hard when you go up for a flight and you want everything to be perfect every single time, and then you do a steep turn and it's not perfectly within those ACS standards. I think that perfectionist mindset for me has been the hardest part through training.
So she said that the perfectionist in her makes it very difficult to be confident that she's ready to go for a check ride. What's your take on perfection for a check ride?
I am listening to a book right now, and it's Rob O'Neill's autobiography. And for those of you who don't know who Rob O'Neill was, he was the Naval SEAL on SEAL Team 6 who shot and killed Osama bin Laden. And it's interesting you brought this up, because he was talking about as he was trying to become a member of SEAL Team 6, they did these drills and they put them in a very stressful situation as best you could in training. They knew it was fake. They knew it was, well, I won't say fake, but it was training. It wasn't real world. And what they were looking for to invite people to join SEAL Team 6, they were looking for people who could make a mistake and let it go and keep going. He says, and the people who got rejected were the ones who dwelled on their mistake. And that's what, there's no such thing as a perfect flight. Years ago, when I was first hired at the airline 38 years ago, the philosophy...
Damn, you're old.
I know, I am old. The Earth was still cooling back then. The philosophy was, let's make these pilots learn everything. I mean, I started on the 727, and you'd have this 4-hour oral and then this 2-hour check ride, and it was intense. I mean, we joked that we had to know how many rivets were on the airplane, all this stuff that just didn't matter. And as an industry, we still kept crashing airplanes. So the focus changed a little bit and said, well, wait a minute, we're still making mistakes. We're trying to create perfect pilots, and it's not happening. We can get maybe 98%, 99%, but we're not ever going to get 100% because we're human. So now, why don't we change the training a little bit to where we focus on error management? And at my airline, we call it threat and error management. So we try to identify the threats before every flight. Okay, what are the threats today? Well, it's a red eye. We're flying in the middle of the night. We've got weather. We've got terrain. We try to identify those things. But we also learn techniques of error management. Okay, an error has been made. Let's manage that error, and let's mitigate that error. Okay, hopefully we don't hurt anybody. We don't break anything. And so, you know, the ACS says you can exceed a tolerance in the ACF momentarily. So if you're doing that steep turn and you lose 120 feet and you get right back to it, well, hey, okay, all right, you know what? And we're going to talk about it, and I'm probably going to tell you, you know, it's because you're focused inside, not outside. If you get your eyes outside, you're going to nail it. And as a flight instructor, that's what I would do with my students. I would take my paper or a book or iPad or whatever, and I would cover up the instruments, and I'd say, let's do another steep turn. And 9 times out of the 10, that second steep turn is really good. It's because they're looking outside. They're not looking inside. But anyway, that's kind of a going off subject a little bit. There is no such thing as a perfect flight. I'm not expecting a perfect flight. And I tell the people in the brief when we get ready to go fly, we do a flight briefing, and I'll say perfection is not the standard. We're not looking for perfect, okay? You're going to make mistakes. If you make a mistake, manage it. That's fine. What do? You're driving home. You miss a turn. Okay, well, you go up the next block and you manage it. We do it every day in life. So I keep saying this. There's no such thing as a perfect flight.
I suffer from the perfection bug as well, as we both know each other. And I think you gave or administers Abby's last 2 check rides. How did she do?
She did great, you know, but she was bouncing off the walls.
Yeah, I think her skills were there long before she thought she was ready. And I think everybody struggles from that anxiety a little bit. One more flight, I'm not quite there yet. And if they don't hit everything perfect, I think even instructors at times want to see perfection. That's just not possible. I struggle with an instructor coming back and saying they did everything today, but steep turns, we need one more flight. I don't think it has to be perfect. And I think we have a DP sitting here telling us it doesn't have to be perfect either.
Yeah, you don't, you know, I can remember being observed on a check ride one time by the FAA, and I was a fairly new examiner, and we took a break and we went outside, and I said, oh man, he's really struggling with this. And his comment to me was, well, hey, you only need to make a 70 on the knowledge test. You don't have to make 100 on this. And it was kind of a light bulb moment for me. Okay, yeah. Do you have to make a 100% on the ground portion of the check ride? No, you don't. Now, we can go back and we say if you missed it on that knowledge test, you better be pretty doggone good this time, because you've already shown me once that you don't know it or you missed it. So when we come back and test it again, we need to have fixed it.
Any other questions, comments, hardships of your training? Yes, Amelia.
How do you think somebody knows when they're ready for a check ride?
Amelia asked, how do you know, or how does someone know when they're ready for a check ride?
Oh boy, I'm trying to go back and think of my training, and that was.
I would say don't ask the applicant.
Yeah.
Normally, the applicant's the worst judge of when they're ready for a check ride.
Yeah, I think you have to trust your instructor's instincts, because you are attached to the instructor. You are going to be a mark on the instructor's record if you go out there and aren't satisfactory. So. They want you to do well. Of course, I mean, everybody wants you to do well, including the examiner. I mean, I hate that. You didn't pass. I hate that. But you got to do it. You know, I always talk about the drive home after the check ride. You know, I'm usually replaying things in my mind. And there have been times, and I don't know, I'm tattling on myself a little bit, but there have been times where I've gone home and somebody has passed, and I kind of think, boy, was that the right call? Was that the right call? There have never been a time where I've gone home where somebody was unsatisfactory and I thought, was that the right call? Okay, I've never questioned my thinking the other way. You know, the ACS makes things pretty easy. There is a standard, and it tells us what it is. You know, so I would say trust your instructor.
I think there's a piece in training that I experience with students and parents when I talk to them that the students that think they're ready for a check ride, they're probably more wrong than the people that don't think they're ready for a check ride. And then more often than not, I think the student has knowledge that the instructor in school could never have. And I joke about this a lot, but I think students are lucky a lot of times, and they show that they have the skill, and they really don't have that skill. I think BOR navigation's one where people happen to get the to from flag correct a couple times with their instructor, and the instructor just thinks they got it. The student has to tell us or the instructor, hey, I really don't understand this concept. I don't understand. I might have got it right, but I don't know it. And I think that's the secret sauce between the student and the instructor. But if you understand the stuff and your instructor says you're ready to go, I think you're ready to go more often than not. Yes, sir.
I believe that sometimes you're going to run across where a student is strongly believes they're never ready. And you have to convince them that they're ready.
For sure.
You know, because like you said, more often than not, they think they're ready and they're not, and it's completely the opposite.
Yeah, the gentleman's saying that he thinks the student, there are students that'll say they're never ready, and sometimes you almost have to kick them out of the nest. That was me during my solo phase. My instructor we'd get to the school, we'd take off, we'd do 3 laps in the pattern. He goes, man, you can solo today. I'm like, not today, man, not today, not today. And ultimately, I think when he decided that it was the day, he didn't tell me. We started taxiing back. He stopped. He says, I'm getting out. You're soloing today. And that was the day I soloed. That was, I think it was shocking for me, but I probably never would have done it if he wouldn't have just got out of the plane.
And then afterwards, you're thinking, oh yeah.
Yeah, this was pretty easy. Because I was ready for a lot longer than I knew I was.
I think one thing that CFIs could do a better job, we need to try to do a better job of stressing our students. Because they get to me, I can't tell you how many times I've heard them say, oh, I've never done that before.
Are they always telling the truth, though?
No, the bullshit flag goes up in a hurry. You're not, yeah, okay, I've never done that before. Well, okay, well, you did it today 7 times, you know. I think we as instructors have to figure out a better way to stress our students. Let them make some mistakes. And now that's the fine line. Do you let them do a takeoff with flaps 40? That's probably not a good choice. Do you let them enter the traffic pattern the wrong way? Boy, I don't know. If there's traffic in the area, absolutely not. Do you let them go to this uncontrolled airport and be on the wrong frequency? That could be dangerous if there are airplanes in the pattern. So do you just jump in and tell them? I mean, I've had several instances of check rides where we started the engine with the chocks in. And I can think of it, at least 3 times it happened. One time it happened where we go out there and we're about to start, and an instructor walks by and he's really waving at us and pointing to the front of the airplane, and my applicant just waved back. And then another instructor was going home. He drove by in front of us in a car, and he stopped and waved at us and was pointing at the front of the airplane, and my guy just waved back. And then one of the line guys comes out in a golf cart and waves at us, and my guy says, man, everybody's being friendly today. And I said, yeah, it's almost like they're trying to tell us something. He goes, yeah, well, we start the engine. And you know, now could I have said, hey, you forgot the chocks? I could have. But what's going to be more impactful for this pilot? Now, so we start the engine, we try to taxi, and he looks at me and he says, oh no, I think I know why everybody is waving at us. We had to stop the engine. Did it take us another 10 minutes? Yes, it did. Did the person fail the check ride? Absolutely not. They made a mistake. We've all made that mistake. But I'll bet that person never forgets chocks again. And, you know, they got a great story to tell on Saturday morning when they're sitting at the flight school eating donuts and drinking coffee. You know, you're not going to believe what I did on my private pilot check ride. It's a good story. So I think as instructors, we've got to let them make those mistakes.
I think you had your hand up.
Yes, this is kind of more so a comment, but a couple weeks ago, a flight school that I've been to several times in Florida, they had 4 check rides in the same day with the same DPE. Is that what's like the regulation when it comes to that? I tried searching it up, and my site said like 3 max in a day, or
No, there's no max.
So his question was, saw DP do 4 check rides at a school in Florida somewhere that he'd been to in the past. Is there any regulations or rules on how many check rides a DP is allowed to do?
No, with the exception of CFI initials. CFI initials is 1. But it used to be 2. They removed that restriction. I allocate 4 hours for an initial check ride, and I will call a CFII an initial. Anytime there's a knowledge test involved, I'm going to allocate 4 hours. For an MEI, multi-engine instructor, or a multi-engine, I'll allocate 3. Now, it never works that way. 4 hours turns into 4.5. So I schedule check rides at 8 a.m. and noon, typically. Like today I'm doing 1.5. I'm doing an instrument ride and a full instrument ride, and then an instrument flight only. Tomorrow, I've got a full something or other, a full instrument, I believe, and I have a commercial flight only, and then I have a commercial recheck, which will only be about 4 maneuvers from a commercial check ride that was previously unsatisfactory. But as far as the regulation, how many we can do it in a day, there is none. You can do as many as you can. I will, if I'm doing maybe multi-engine rides, I'll schedule, sometimes I'll schedule 3. That's a long day. That's, 8 a.m. to probably 6 p.m., and that's no break. That's no lunch break. That's nothing. That's just going straight through. It's a long day, and I walk away, and I'm tired, and I say to myself, I'm never doing that again until the next week when we've had some bad weather and they're trying to get check rides in. So 4 in a day, 4 full check rides, I don't see how you do that. Maybe you can. I couldn't do it.
Start the oral in the dark at like 5:30 in the morning?
Well, yeah, you could.
I
you
guess.
could. And there's no restriction that says we can't fly at night. I'm not going to fly check rides at night. So you can do that, but I'm not going to do that.
So, Abby, he's not doing check rides here tomorrow, right? He's cheating on us?
No.
Wow.
Well, but
Busted.
It wasn't your failure. It wasn't your failure
Yeah,
either.
that's good. Way to recover there. Way to recover.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions from the audience, the group? Nothing was hard in your training. Other people, nothing struggles. All right. Well, with that, we'll say thanks for coming. We appreciate all of you listening to the show. We got some stickers and things. We'll stick around and answer all your questions and talk more if you want to. But for the show, we'll wrap it up. As always, thanks for listening, and stay behind the prop.
Thanks for checking out the Behind the Prop podcast. Be sure to click subscribe and check us out online at BehindTheProp.com. Behind the Prop is recorded in Houston, Texas. Creator and host is Bobby Doss. Co-host is Wally Mulhern. The show is for entertainment purposes only and is not meant to replace actual flight instruction. Thanks for listening, and remember, fly safe.